Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Speaking Legally, where the legal meets the cultural, your favorite news show on the planet. Produced by Destiny Designers University. I am your host and producer, Dr. Stacey N.C. Grant, and I'm joined by your two co-hosts, legal experts that we have, Royce Russell Esquire and Edward Pichardo Esquire. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for engaging in the chat, letting us know all of your thoughts around what it is that we share and discuss here on the show. Wow, there's a lot going on in the world, but before we get into all the news, let's let our co-hosts greet you as they normally do. First up, legal expert Royce Russell
I mean,
Esquire.
they
I'm
do,
like Royce. You double ESQ squared, so I did the double today, Royce.
it's all right. I'm so nice they named me twice. You know what I mean? Two first names, that's the way it goes. You know what I mean? I'm used to that. It's like New York, New York, right? So it's Royce
Mhm.
Russell here today, hopefully bringing some facts and some news and some legal information to your doorstep. And hopefully you'll open up that package and receive it and read it and understand it and come to your own conclusions. There's a lot on the plate today, three different stories from three different areas that bring up some legal issues that we want to make sure that you're aware of. And I'll pass it on to my man, Ed Pichardo, ESQ. What say you, brother? What say you?
Thank you, Royce. Thank you, Dr. Grant. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Hola. Good to have you here today. I'm sure you're going to find the subjects that we discuss to be enlightening, fulfilling, and quite educational. Definitely going to discuss some information here today that we feel should be of some definite legal interest to all of you. So welcome.
Dr. Grant, we usually start with the passing of our
Mhm.
ancestors if that happens and it's sad news. And, we should keep that format, even though this person is alive and kicking, their political career has passed. And we're not talking about
Oh boy.
Cuomo. We're not talking about Como. So I'll let you lay the groundwork as to whose political career has now passed besides Como.
Well, yeah, this has been someone who has been a part of the politics, the fabric of New York City for a long time, particularly within Harlem. And, there was a concession that was made, and I guess for those who live in that particular district, it's a little bittersweet because he has served for so long in this capacity, but it has led to another Black woman who is now going to be taking over that seat. So, who are we talking about?
That's right. The one and only Miss Jordan rising to the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of an upset. We pray for Senator Perkins. We pray for him being able to enjoy his retirement years. We know that there's been some physical and health challenges. So, our love and prayers go up for him and his family. And we thank him for his years of service. When the guard changes, we can't just throw out people who have done well and did what they could with what they have. And now it's a new day where there's another Black woman who is coming to the forefront of leadership within New York City. So congratulations to our next woman in government with a little
And
bit of melanin.
And
Well,
Ed, before I pass it to you, because I know this is, you're a Harlemite, For those who don't know, he still maintained his passport and dual citizenship there. So, he's a Harlemite. Um, this brings up a couple of things. One, what does a secession plan look like, right? And you and I had this conversation just before going on air, right? How long do you have to be in office before you decide that it's time to move on? I asked that question and answer it in my own head. As long as people will allow you to stay, you will stay. But is that for the betterment of the community? Not to say that Brother Perkins was not doing what he had to do. It's just time. And Dr. Grant, we've talked about it. It's time for the secession. It's time for the moving on. I mean, look, I commend him. He was one of the first elected officials in New York City to stand behind Barack Obama as far as president is concerned. He was there with the exonerating five, you know what I mean, back day when Central Park Five was around, when those kids were wrongfully accused. So he's been around. He's led the chants in the forefront of litigation as far as lead poisoning and protecting kids in public schools and protecting kids in their environment. So the brother has done great work. But at some point, you got to look around and say, wow, the neighborhood is being gentrified. Things are going on. And as she has been labeled, I don't know if she labels herself this way, a democratic socialist, here she is, and she's moving and she's moving about. And although all the votes haven't been tallied, he's conceded, and the margin is getting broader and broader. And this is where we at. Brother Ed, what do you say about the blocks of District 9? Central Harlem.
Well, I just want to say that this was a race that had a number of candidates. I think there might have been about 7 candidates running in this race. And I believe, if I'm correct, on election night, Perkins was ahead. But then once the ranked choice voting started taking place, again. And eventually, now I have to say it, and eventually, it came down to the counting of the absentee ballots. Even after all of that, the margin was so tight that it triggered an automatic recount of those votes. And then only then, after I believe the Perkins camp saw that there was no making up in terms of the voting margin, is when he finally their camp conceded. Now, this speaks directly to this issue of succession plans, because as great and as dynamic as some of these legislators of color of times past have been in work, because I worked for the New York State Senate when Bill Perkins was in office, and I remember him being a serious, courageous activist on behalf of his Harlem community. He took no shorts, serious as cancer. If you tried to talk to him about something, there wasn't no, ain't nobody smiling here, brother. There's too much stuff going on.
He wore his dashikis. He did his thing.
Yeah. Right. He wasn't scared to walk through Harlem by himself. No bodyguards, nobody. He ran a marathon. I believe he was a cancer survivor. He was a strong advocate for those in public housing and the housing authority, which there are many of those projects throughout, the village of Harlem. But from what I understand, in the last couple of years, his health has been diminishing. Yeah. People have been looking at his attendance on the city council and his ability to either stop certain votes or vote on legislation or introduce. And, once it gets to that point, you start saying to yourself, and that generation,
you hope you start saying to yourself.
Yeah. I mean, that generation, it's been, I think, pretty well documented that generation has a hard time letting go of these seats. And a lot of them win in many cases because they are household names. Those who normally vote in these communities, when they see their names on the ballot.
And let me stop you. You said that generation. I want to make sure what generation we talking about, because we getting up in generations. I'm
getting up in generations, but at the same time, I'm not. I believe Bill is like 70, 72.
Right. So you're talking about.
I'm not there yet.
Yeah, but I'm saying to make sure that we understand what generation we're talking about. I would like to call this generation, or the generation that you're referring to, kind of like the first responders. And why do I say that? It's because, the Percy Suttons, the Perkins, the Powells, you're the one the Dinkins, you're the one that broke through. You know what I mean? You broke through. There you are, the Dick Parsons, you broke through, and now here you go. And you hold that tenure for a long period of time. And then you say to yourself, where's the succession plan? I'm sorry, Dr. Grant. Where's the next person?
So while you're talking, and I wanted you to finish your thought, my emotions got the best of me as you were finishing that up, because it's a sensitive topic for us as a community. We don't talk about succession planning, but we also don't balance out what the need is to have longevity in certain places, right? Because in order to get seniority in some of the particular positions and committees and different forms of government, you need to be there for a while. So we need to talk about succession planning, and we need to talk about the proper training so that when there's a changing of the guards, it doesn't become this situation where something tragic or something drastic has to happen before we're prepping the next person. Because I'm sure that this new incoming city council member could learn some great things from Mr. Perkins going out. And we need to really start looking at how do we bridge that gap, because we use the buzzword succession planning, but I think we make it bigger than it needs to be. It's just really starting to tap talent that's around you. And how can that talent be at the table while someone is serving and being in a position, even if it's 4 people running for an office, may the best person win, but at least having them in the room so they understand, to the point that you were making, Mr. Pichardo, all the things that he did in the state assembly and on city council. Do you really know that coming in as the opposition and now taking the seat? That's my concern.
If I may, what I hope happens is that incoming legislators will learn that there will come a time when, because when you're a legislator, you have staff, and so the hope is that those who are part of your staff are people that you cultivate and you educate, and you kind of get to that point where you are then able to pass on the baton to support and allow them to either succeed you, or you create coalitions within whatever organization or legislature that you're in to be able to take up the causes that are most dear to you and your communities. And but instead, what I see happening in many cases is that you will have staff members that will complain that, hey, listen, I've been working for this legislator for many years, but I'm really not seeing any opportunity at succeeding that individual or having them help me get into a similar position where I can then take up the mantle. Because you're absolutely right, Dr. Grant. It's important that a legislator eventually become a senior legislator so that they can get the plum assignments in the certain committees or become the leaders of that entire legislature. That is absolutely true. You could come into office, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're holding a leadership position in that legislature or that you have an important committee assignment. Mm-hmm. So that takes years for that to happen. Like, for instance, with Rangel, head of Ways and Means, et cetera, very powerful position in the House of Representatives, which takes many years to get to. Problem, though, is that even with that in mind, you should still be looking to cultivate younger leadership, because at some point, as senior as you may become or whatever, at some point, your faculties may diminish, your health may diminish, or your ability to hold that district may diminish. And you're going to have to be able to figure out some way of be able to create some level of continuity. And in many cases, you don't see that. And I guess it's because, these folks fought so hard to get into the position, or there's not a dearth of talent. Who knows? But something there has to be a change, though. There has to be.
I understand your empathy, and I understand your sympathy in reference to, they fought so hard to get in these positions, but somebody fought harder than they did for them to get those positions, right? And you're a kind of gentler human being, so I commend you for that. Coma Star and all that other good stuff. I commend you for that. But there's a reason. There's a reason why, the letter S in secession and the letter S in selfish both got S's in it, because those that don't have a secession plan are basically selfish. Now, you may not want to call it that, but the kid from 665 is going to call it that. They're selfish. And so what do? They don't look out. It's a mentoring program. It's an each one teach one. It's a simple concept. Look, if you groom other people, man, I've been practicing law for 25 years. Almost at least 95, if not 100% of the young men and women that come work for my firm go off to law school. And I tell them, you only got a 3-year tenure here. You're not going to be my secretary forever. I don't want you to be my paralegal forever. You got bigger things, greater things to do, right? I'm not worried about them being another lawyer in the field. I'm not worried about that. Go do it. Now, what you talked about coalition and allies, simply put, if you're out there and Royce Russell or Ed Pichardo or Dr. Grant push you to go do certain things that you thought that maybe you couldn't do, or you needed some support or some inside track, and now you're actually doing it, guess who can knock on your door? Guess who can say, I got a friend over across the street or down the block or in the Senate or in the Assembly, in legislation, in the judicial. I got them. Here they are because we walk the walk together. I can. And that's what you should be looking at. That's the piece. That's part of the puzzle. You don't worry about somebody pushing you out. As a matter of fact, the guy you grooming doesn't really want to push you out if he comes from the cultural foundation that we know to be. As a matter of fact, they pretty much scared to push you out. They really don't want to touch you. They revere you. They admire you. They're coming back to you saying things like, should I? Can I? You should be looking at them, man, we passed the should and could and can. Go do. Just put me down. Let me see what you see, because maybe I didn't see that. And once again, there's a reason why the letter S exists in both of those words: secession, and selfish. And when you don't have a succession plan, you are selfish.
Well, you know what? Time marches on. Time marches on. Things don't stay the same.
That's right.
Well, here we go. Here we go.
And so I say that Kristen Jordan is now one of the wave of women who have joined the city council during this latest election season. It's the season for the woman, right?
That's right.
We must say that, because that is true in so many ways, especially on the political landscape. And we will see. Obviously, the community of Harlem spoke, and they said, we want a woman in that office, and we want new leadership. We want a democratic socialist, because we are now in a time where people are embracing progressive politics. They don't want incremental change, it seems, anymore. They want serious change. And so, we're going to see what type of serious change is created. Hopefully it's real and not fake.
That's right.
Hopefully.
That's what we can look forward to,
Hopefully. Well, we'll watch how all of this plays out, because there's a shift happening. Clearly, you alluded to it. The majority on city council, women are taking over everywhere. So this we see happening, and I'm confident as a woman that there'll be some great leadership coming forth from that. But it doesn't mean that just because women are in office that all women are going to think the same or vote the same or advocate for the same thing. So we still have to be diligent in how we show up and stay engaged. This show is here for you to be aware of what's happening, for you to understand the legal underpinnings, so to speak, of what you're watching, because the media will spin what the media spins. So do your own critical thinking, get the facts, get the information as we move forward. And the moral to that story, before we move to the next story, is that we appreciate those that paved the way when there wasn't African-American legislature, where there weren't enough of us represented. Now as the numbers increase and new comes in, that we embrace what that could be and prepare for the next generation.
And Dr.
That being said, yes.
And Dr. Grant, in making the transition to the next story, and with that being said, in succession plan, once again, I'll share with the audience a conversation that Ed and I had off camera, right? We know that Cuomo is resigning, right? That's the next what we're talking about, right? We know Cuomo is resigning, right? Or have resigned. 14 days, 2 days, 2 hours, whatever, 14 minutes, he's out the door. And before we get into the minutia or talking in more detail about this resignation and what it ultimately means in a political sense and path, Ed and I, we did talk about that there is, and this is part of the conversation I was talking about the other day, where Ed was saying that, certain people are going to be forced to do certain things because they're constituents and which I believe to a degree. Just backtracking and looking at some of the articles, you had different people from an article that I read. Hayes was saying, well, no, let's go back and we have to do a more thorough investigation. That to me rings airs of like, let me not put my face on this impeachment part too quickly, because the investigation was thorough. You had the Judicial Ways, you had the Judicial Committee start to talk about, oh yeah, there's a conflict in interest here because David Polks, that's the law firm that's working on this case, and one of the partners there is married to one of the judges that'll be sitting on the high court that will have to deal with the impeachment. You start to get all these incestuous kind of, relationships going on. And so when I think about his resignation, I don't want, from a cultural standpoint and from a personal standpoint, I don't want people to think like, oh yeah, the heavier the law came down, and then that's what made him run to, all right, the law was against him. Not so fast. The law is very flexible and very favorable to certain people, as opposed to us three on this show. And so, yes, here it is. He had these charges, but I am imagining in a world where people were saying, hey man, look, don't have me I don't want to play a part in this impeachment thing. Would you please leave? Because if I got to play a part in this, then the light is going to shine on me. Not that you can hurt me, but the light is going to shine on me. What people fail to realize is that part of the impeachment process, part of the impeachment umbrella is, we got the sexual assault, but then we could delve into the nursing homes. Then we could delve into $5.1 million that may have been spent on your memoirs talking about COVID. Then we could delve into hostile work environment, and we could delve into a lot of things that a lot of people don't have clean hands on, that's been around. And so don't have me participate in this. And there were others that were saying, hey, look, let's go, let's get the gavel and let's go do what we need to do. But I am sure there were people that are like, yo, look, don't force me to do this, man. And so lastly, the last thing that Ed and I was talking about off camera is that those same people, whoever they are, I am so sure they are wiping their brow, and whatever God that they pray to, or whatever situation they have spiritually, and hear me out. And this is why you may laugh, but this is how true it is. They were praying to whoever their spirit said to pray to, because look what happened. Cuomo's out. Lieutenant governor got to take over. Hey, everybody, Jumaane Williams just lost that race for lieutenant governor by a slither of a slither. There are people that are saying, they're saying, holy, that Jumaane Williams would have been the governor right now. A brother would have been a governor right now. So there are people that are wiping their brow saying, holy camole, I'm glad.
The second brother from another mother.
That's right. That's right. And before we go into detail, because this is a cultural show, right? This is legal and the cultural. We know Jumaane would have brought in people that are not part of the insider crew. I'm alleging. I'm thinking out loud. I'm imagining. You would see faces that you wouldn't normally see up in there. You out, you in. You out, you in. And that would have upset that apple cart so bad. The wheel turneth over. People would have been running, packing their bag. Where you going, man? Jumaane's in town. I'm just packing, just throwing it in. And I'm not saying it in a bad way. And I'm not saying it in a bad way. I'm saying it in a good way. He's outside the box thinking. He's feet on the street thinking. And when you look at it in retrospectively, had he won the lieutenant, now everybody got to remember, he barely lost that. It wasn't like, like he got stomped out. As a matter of fact, if we had choice rank voting, whatever the hell, he might have been in there. All I'm saying is that
it wouldn't have been.
I know he wouldn't have been subject to it. I get it. I understand that. But he was right at the doorstep, and nobody can predict what the future holds. And he would have been governor right now.
And one of the interesting things is that he used that as a platform for then get the public advocate seat, because he did so well statewide that when it came time for him to run in New York City,
it was easy.
He did extremely well and was able to get right into the seat. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. There are many insiders who that would have been a fearsome moment for them. In fact, I imagine it's kind of like, I don't know if any of you read comic books, but there's these what if comic books that are part of the Marvel comics. And they always talk about what if this and what if that. And it would have been funny just envisioning a scenario of what this would have looked like with Jumaane Williams as the lieutenant governor during all of this.
Right.
I think they might even try to use that as an excuse for him to stay there.
Yeah, that's legit. So now,
listen, man.
So now Ed is Ed. You are clearly a passenger. You are clearly a passenger in my car now, right? Because you're saying to yourself, like, yo, I hate to be a cynic, but I'm telling you right now, they'd have been like, yo, you know what? We need to do another investigation. And we know that the report was thorough. Letitia James' report was thorough. There would have been people clamoring, wait a minute, well, she didn't dot the I on that. So we got to go back in and hold up. Let's do this, because Jumaane would have been standing there just like this. All right, let's impeach. Let's go. Let's what's going on. You'd have saw. Yeah. It would have been Watergate all over again. I mean,
and you know, and the good thing for the incoming governor is that during all of the, you know, recent reporting and the COVID updates and many other, you know, press appearances by the governor, you didn't see her there. And I think kind of some of the rumor is that he actually didn't really want her to run for lieutenant governor, but she ran anyway, and, you know, and beat Jumaane. And that distance is what is now insulating her from some of this backlash, unless something comes out that we don't know about, because she wasn't named in the report apparently, and nobody's really connecting her to any of these incidents or scandals. I don't think there's been any report that these women any of these ladies approached her about, you know, what was happening to them, or that she was in any sort of decision-making role, you know, especially with what's happening with all of those who are being linked to the discrediting of one of the complaining victims, Boylan. You know, Mr. Rosa has had to resign. You know, others are catching blowback who were involved. I read an article about Alfonso David now being questioned in terms of his role and his current role, and people asking him to resign from, I think, the Human Rights Campaign or the Human Rights Coalition, one of those organizations. He has a position in which he took on since he left, you know, the governor's office. I mean, a lot of people are starting to catch it. You know, people that have some connection to these incidents, and
that's why they were ringing his doorbell saying, "Yo, man, look, don't put me through this, man, because if you put me through this, here we go." And that's not even voting to do it.
Well, listen, it's not a done deal that there isn't going to be an impeachment.
Yeah.
There are still many asking for it to go forward, and some people are saying, well, you know, they should go forward anyway to prevent him from being able to take office in the future. Which I'm not sure either.
No. I mean, look. I hear what you're saying, and I understand.
But listen, I'm with you that I don't think that's going to happen. I think that everyone's exhausted. Right. It's going to cost a lot of money.
And in COVID, that would be irresponsible.
And check this out. If this thing gets to the Senate for a trial, and any of the 7 members, or majority of the 7 members, or all 7 members of the Court of Appeals that are part of that jury decide to vote against impeachment, and he decides then to file a lawsuit contesting his impeachment.
Yeah, they did not.
Who hears that case?
That's right. Because
some people are saying if they're going to do it, they better do it right.
That's right. And not only that, for folks out there understand, you're not getting, I mean, when we say jurors of your peers, this is a case where it really is jurors of your peers, because it is the assembly that makes up the jurors. You know what I'm saying? So
no. I'm talking
about wait. Richard said you have the better chance of hearing Eric B than that happening.
well, just to be clear, the assembly would vote for the articles of impeachment, and then it would go to the Senate for a trial.
Right.
That's the way it works.
And so what I'm saying is that that's still your peer group. It ain't like you and I coming off the street, getting these facts, and then going to that is truly a jury of your peers, because the people in the Senate know, like, No one gets there with clean hands. I'm just sorry to say, it just is what it is. And you're talking about having, allies here and allies there and coalitions. I mean, the whole building is full of that, and it's supposed to be. That's how you get work done. So, I don't think they want to go that right. And as you said, it would be fiscally stupid to do that, not be in the best interest of New York State in reference to the things that we have to do. But I think he was wise not to open up the can of worms of his, nursing home fiasco, bridge fiasco, memoir fiasco, hostile work environment fiasco.
Oh, those investigations are not precluded.
No.
He's also going to be subject to all of those lawsuits.
Look, he's
also still subject to all of those investigations going on by those 3 DA's offices.
I am not not in the business of pitching a ditch and have him lie in it. He is just he is out of the way where he's out of the way. And we've seen with all those things that you've labeled, we've seen politicians do worse. Pornographic stuff, children stuff, underage things, and they have come back. So as powerful as he is, you could pile all that on. There's a difference between him and Deshaun Watson, who got 14 victims, labeling him sexual harassment. It's just a different world, and what the future holds is going to be different as he walked out of there with his longtime partner, as they say, to move on to the next chapter of his life, whatever chapter that may be. And I don't know if that precludes him from running for president at some point, at some time, in some place, because his apology was still one that was kind of like, like I didn't know culturally what I was doing, kind of like it's a new world. Like squeezing me inappropriately was inappropriate in 1972 and is inappropriate in 1921, in 1982, and 1952. But all right, if that's what you're rolling with, I've seen people roll with less. I don't want to tell you what happened to them, but I've seen people roll with less. Right.
Well, as I said last show when we talked about this, and I'll repeat it again, my heart is always thinking about the victim. And Mr. Russell, you raised that as well. Just being careful that there are real lives that are attached to this. Politically, it's a huge inconvenience. It's a blemish on a record. But for what was found in the report, those are lives. Those are lives that are forever impacted because of what they experienced, and just being sensitive to that, and the fact that there's no excuse for somebody feeling violated, and the fact that New York State, I was shocked to see things turn out this way. I didn't know how it would go and what would happen, but I pray that the victims feel a little bit as if they see some sort of justice unfolding, because they, as you said, the AG did a very thorough report. So we'll see how the new incoming governor continues to handle. She is pledging transparency and everything else that's left to deal with the past administration, I guess you're calling it now. There's so many implications because he's appointed so many people. Like this is a lot that we're dealing with going into the fourth quarter of 2021, on top of recovering from this COVID-19 fiasco that we've been experiencing, which is not over. Numbers are still rising. So it's a lot happening. So at the end of the day, family, stay tuned, but definitely make sure that you are aware of how this is going to change and watch certain things play out. We talked on this show about who you elect, why it's important to elect certain people, who gets appointed, who knows that list. Mr. Russell's always talking about it. We're leaving you the breadcrumbs so that you can start doing your own investigative journalism on what is happening in New York City, because there goes the rest of the country. So,
you know what, Dr. Grant, let me just say something here, and Ed, this might be a little levity to the situation, but it's definitely full of truth. I'm telling you, this Lieutenant Governor, I'm sorry, what is her name? I didn't have
Kathy Hochul.
Kathy Hochul, right? She right now, as she puts on the new armor to be the governor, she also should have, as our Native American brothers taught us a long time ago, put your ear to the ground so you can hear who's marching and coming your way, right? That's how they knew whether the buffalo or whoever was coming, they were herding and was coming in a certain direction. Put the ear to the ground so you could understand which direction the herd is coming. Because Letitia James didn't put all that effort in that report just to say I did a good job as AG. It just did. And I'm not saying what her motivation was. I'm putting that to the side. You don't do what you do and have the aspirations that you have and be at the place that you're at right now. And if I'm this lieutenant governor, if I'm forward thinking, one ear should be on the ground because it's coming. It's coming. Now you'll play this back in whatever year. It's coming.
Okay, and you said it first on Speaking Legally, where the legal meets the cultural. So, as we continue on, and Richard, thank you for your participation in the chat. We have another issue dealing with policing and legislature and a lot of what we talk about on this show. This is an interesting one. So I'm definitely curious to get an overview on this story from our legal experts. And what does this really mean?
Okay, so a few weeks ago, I'm on the board of an organization in Long Island called Erase Racism, and one of the members of the board is a very prominent attorney on Long Island. His name is Fred Brewington, and he alerted us to an upcoming legislative bill in the Nassau County Legislature that would allow, quote unquote, first responders, i.e., police officers, to sue protesters. A bill that basically deemed them a protected class for purposes of their human rights law. And it was just crazy, the idea that these cops are now going to be able to sue protesters for harassment, menacing, and assault, as if there isn't currently a law in place that says that it's a felony to assault a police officer.
And a police officer cannot be harassed.
Yeah, as if, police officers don't enjoy enough protection enough, even at the hip, that they need additional protection. So basically, the Nassau County Legislature passes this law. Thank God that the Nassau County Executive, Laura Curran, I believe it is, vetoes the bill. Now, what does that mean? Okay, so let me just explain for the audience. Every county has most counties have legislatures. Let me put it that way.
Most counties.
And the reason I say most counties is because even though there's a Brown County and a New York County and a Kings County, those are boroughs, and their legislative practices are more dominated by the New York City Council as a legislature, right? Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about Nassau County and Suffolk County, they actually have legislatures that actually pass laws and that govern, certain conduct within the confines of their counties. And so Nassau County has a legislature. It's dominated by Republicans. There's a Democrat or two who caucus with Democrats but are independents. One of those folks actually voted for this law, but is now saying that he is not joining in on any veto, or rather the override of a veto. What's the override of a veto? Right. So you need the executive in that legislature, which is the county executive, to sign the bill after it's passed by the legislature. If the executive vetoes that bill or refuses to sign it, that legislature then has the ability to say, you know what, we're going to override your veto. But usually that requires as in this case, I believe it requires a 2/3 majority. And so while the Republicans are the majority on that legislature, they don't have a veto-proof majority, if you will. They would need this independent, I guess, other Democrats to sign on to this thing, and they don't have those numbers to be able to do that. So for now, people are saying that, this bill is no longer a danger. But, this was a dangerous bill. It's basically labeled unlawful discriminatory practices targeting first responders.
Now, Ed, can I stop you right there? Even the title of it, first responders.
Yeah.
First responders mean the way we understood the term first responder is that there's a tragedy. There is something that's going World Trade Center,
ambulance,
COVID,
firemen.
So we're first responders to a tragedy that's taking place, something that is abnormal, that needs, necessary immediate care that we need to handle in that very specialized way. People protesting for social justice and civil rights is not an event where you need first responders. Like, what are you doing? You making what? Like peaceful protest has always been peaceful protest. So even the terminology that you try to categorize it in gives it the halo of innocence when you should just say, we want to have police officers have more rights, whether they respond to something that quote unquote that's a protest first respond, or whether they respond to my house because of some other issue. I still don't have the right and do other things.
Let me say this, right? So why are we saying this? It says first responders, Ed. Are you guys overreacting? Actually, no. There is the first section of this bill contains its legislative intent. Let me read you what it says. It says, it is the judgment of this legislature that the recent widespread pattern of physical attacks and intimidation directed at the police has undermined the civil liberties of the community at large. It has been reported that over 700 federal, state, and local law enforcement officers have sustained injury in civil unrest since the close of May of last year, according to the U.S. Department of Justice data. So it talks about this.
How did they sustain injury?
Yeah.
Did they sustain injury because I punched you in your face? Did you sustain injury because I tried to trip you and I broke my leg? How? Like, come on, man. Let's get to the nitty gritty.
Okay, so this is the way this whole thing is couched is that we want to protect our law enforcement officers. Never mind that I would imagine that a good number of that stuff that you're talking about there happened during the assault on the Capitol by these conservative individuals who actually are their friends. But let me put that to the show for a second.
That forward thinking. That crew thought about that, or they were just thinking about down the block?
No, these are, I'm sorry, brother. These are very strategic and cunning individuals, I have to say. Okay. First of all, the idea is couching this law as first responder is smart, because you don't want to say just out and out police. Well, they say first responder, right? And so it says, it shall be an unlawful discriminatory practice for any person to harass, menace, assault, or injure an individual due to such individual's status as a first responder, and such unlawful discriminatory practices are hereby prohibited where such first responder is in uniform or is otherwise clearly identified as a first responder. Check this out. There is an irrebuttable presumption that such harassment, menacing, assault, or injury is motivated by such individual status as a first responder. So, audience, I don't know if you remember when we were talking about the hate crimes law in New York City and the presumptions and all that. Right. We talked about all of the exceptions and the doubts.
Right. So if you Asian and you get hit, the presumption is a hate crime.
No, but in the hate crimes law, it's not automatic. You have to like kind of prove that here, there's an irrebuttable presumption if the person is in uniform. That's what's so crazy about this law. And so it even includes corrections officers. It talks about that this person may commence this first responder may commence a civil action, so it's a private right of action, and can recover declaratory injunctive relief, recover compensatory damages, punitive damages, attorney's fees, and such other relief as the court may deem appropriate.
Wow.
Now I would
no. Check this out. May be commenced without exhaustion of administrative remedies. May also and shall not require that a criminal charge be brought or criminal conviction be obtained as a condition precedent to
Oh
commencing the civil action.
So you don't have to get arrested for us to move forward. But you know what? What I will say is that in your recitation of it, it talked about correction officers, and I want to take it outside of the scope of first responders and kind of like say, here, just from my mouth to everybody's ears, there may not be enough legislation that really talks and cater to correction officers. I mean, because you're talking a lifestyle where you have to do what you have to do in an environment that is unsafe. And we're not talking about how you get there and when it was built and the history of it. And then when you leave it, it's almost like being a district attorney. When you're assistant district attorney, you're putting people away to go to jail. When you leave your 9 to 5, you are subject to craziness. Just pure out craziness. And there was no protection as far as any assistant district attorneys out there that are prosecuting people. There's none of that. You just walk out there on your own plank. That's it. And I'm not making the analogy or making any similar comments as needed, but when you mentioned correction officers, there are correction officers that when they're done, they're 9 to 5, and Bobo gets out. Bobo always remembers Officer Pachado. Always remembers Officer Pachado. Don't remember Bobo because there's been 20 Bobos.
But that's a felony, though. You agree that's a felony?
No. I'm saying that. I'm not saying it in relation to this law. What I'm saying is that we just need to. You mentioned correction officers, and I'm saying there's not enough talk about the job that they do. That's all I'm saying. There's not enough. When you mention it, you just kind of slide in and slide out. You know, that's a tough place to be. And if you're going to do something that's progressive, you need to talk about protections for those folks.
Well, you know, and I think one of the things that bothers the opponents of this law is the harass part, because that harass part is like,
you can't harass police officers. We all know that.
I mean, suppose I think this.
Suppose I got a taser and I got a gun, and you talking about my mother? I mean, like for real? Like what you doing?
Right now I could get sued because I'm criticizing you.
Yeah, come on, what are we doing here?
Subject to a civil penalty of not more than $25,000 per violation, recoverable for and payable to the agreed first responder. Talking about bankrupting protesters, people who are simply exercising their First Amendment rights. Why do I mention that? Because apparently, and that law, and this article talks about that, immediately, once again, the name of Tish James comes up, the AG. She basically apparently wrote a letter and said that this law is going to be subject to all sorts of lawsuits in terms of its enforceability. And she advised the legislature not to move forward with this, or rather the executive not to sign it, because of all of the legal litigation that this was going to create, because they were definitely going to be sued in terms of the enforceability of this law. And Nassau County was going to have to cover the cost of all of this litigation.
There's no way. And all that money would have came off the poor backs
of us
that we know in Hempstead and all other type of places. And on top of it, you got the Attorney General, Tish James, right now in the lawsuit, New York versus New York, in a lawsuit where she, on behalf of the people in New York City, she's suing the police department for their actions at social justice protests as we know it from December to May of this year. So I mean, that's consistent with her position, and she's a power player. And hats off to her to being consistent in the thought of how she wants to proceed and what justice looks like. And this is ludicrous.
And by the way, and this law was providing human rights protections to this class of individual, i.e. these law enforcement officers, that it doesn't provide to other aggrieved groups who actually face actual discrimination on a daily basis.
Yes, without a question.
So it was, so this is, audience.
It's easy to say this comes from Nassau, so let's brush it off.
This is part of a national. This is part of a national wave.
Exactly. To your point, that you can't sleep. You got to sleep with one eye open and take turns, because as soon as you close both of the eyes, that's it. You got something like this rolling up. And thank God there's brothers and organizations like Erase Racism, brother Fred Brewington out there, always fighting a good fight, that's on top of this, because the guys back on 125th Street and on 156th Street and in Hollis, Queens, or whatever, that's going on in Nassau seems like another world. Like, that's over there.
And I'm gonna tell you something. This is definitely about vigilance, right? Because my understanding is when this thing first crept into committee, people looked at it, they saw first responder, and they kind of said, "Oh, okay,
that makes sense.
Okay, this looks good.
Yeah,
all right."
Yeah.
Until they started reading the fine points. They said,
fine print. It's reading.
And you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of a story some years back. I don't know if you guys are aware of a woman named Joanne Chesimard. So Joanne Chesimard is the legal, if you will, name of a woman who changed the name to Assata Shakur.
Oh, well, yes.
And so years ago, apparently in the U.S. Congress, Maxine Waters, this bill comes out saying, condemning or something Joanne Chesimard, and my understanding is she isn't sure who Joanne Chesimard is, but she hears that this woman apparently was responsible for the assault or the killing of some police officers. She says, "Okay, I'm gonna vote for that." Until somebody says, "Congresswoman," they're talking about Assata Shakur, and all of a sudden she's like, "Whoa, wait a minute, I didn't know that." Mm-hmm. And so I say all that to say that in many cases, conservatives will paint something a certain way, make it look a certain way, make it look innocent. And then you take a closer look at the fine points and you say, "Whoa, wait a minute. What are you trying to pull on me?" And this was what this was. Because when they mentioned, and look, you were talking the minute I mentioned the correction officers, you're like, "Yeah, we got to appreciate that." Of course, we got to appreciate the jobs they do.
That's what we're talking about.
This is not what this is about. This is not to protect them at all. There are so many other things they can do to protect them, like properly staffing these jails and so forth, and giving them what they need. And we're not talking about that. We're talking about creating some artificial, unlawful, discriminatory practice law, and then coming up with these shenanigans in these games to try to make.
Well, even in the scenario that we talked about, what they did was that they covered a large group so it wouldn't be as egregious. Because the bottom line, correction officers will never be a first responder, right? They're not going to a protest. So, you just slide it in there. So you give the blanket that we're talking about a whole bunch of people. I pull them out because of any legislation, we need to revisit that. We need to revisit how to do it just in general. Yes. That's the reason why I pull them out of the branch. You know what I mean? If you said ambulance workers in the same breath of first responders, I would say let's pull them out because we know what happens and what they confront. That's something different. But they're not rolling up to protest, engaging with folks in a negative way. They're there to help folks if they need it. So that was the point of that. But as you said, Ed, is the final point. And I have a quick story. It reminds me watching you talk to some clients. They don't really know that you from Harlem until they step the foot. And then you gotta set it straight, you know what I mean? Sometimes, it might be reading the finer print, or it might be saying something that's just like, wait a minute, what you say again?
Or they don't know I speak Spanish, right?
Oh, El barrio. They don't know.
Really more that than anything else. They're like, what you just said? Like if my mom calls me, I say, "Hold on, wait a minute." Oh, yeah, they're like, "What?" I didn't know you spoke Spanish. I'm like, "Yeah, we come in this color too."
Exactly.
There's a bunch of us that look like this too and speak Spanish.
That's a whole nother show for a whole nother day because we are at the top of the hour. But definitely, I'm glad that we were able to see that folks were reading. Because sometimes folks don't read, they don't pay attention, and it's the okie doke. What does Mr. Russell like to say? The 3-car Monty?
You better read something before you need something. Absolutely.
Well, we're going to close out today's show with a little commercial. And thank you, Sam, for being in there. He just figured out that Rich was your brother. Yeah, indeed. So we appreciate the support. And I want to thank our co-host for supporting our fourth annual Faithpreneur Weekend. So, amongst being a producer of multiple shows every year, I also produce an annual event, and we started back in 2018 with this Faithpreneur Weekend. You can go to the website to learn more about it. But it's grown and grown and expanded and expanded. And this is a platform where I build capacity for entrepreneurs who build their businesses with the foundation of faith. So that's why it's called Faithpreneur Weekend. So even with coronavirus, we were able to still have an amazing virtual experience. Cardiac Arrest, like I said, one of the sponsors. So as we continue to grow, we invite you to join. And guess what? Because of relationships, because of the fact that so many sponsors have come on board, we're able to offer complimentary access to those of you who want to be a part of the event. We partnered with Queensborough President, the first African-American Queensborough President, Donovan Richards Jr. So if you go to this website and you put in the code QBP for Queensborough President, QBP, you can register for a sponsored virtual seat at this conference. It is hybrid, but that VIP is sold out because we're being COVID conscious and making sure that we keep the in-person down to a very small, manageable, and safe vaccinated and or tested group. But if you want to join in and this is of interest to you, you can go to faithpreneurweekend.com and once again put in the code QBP for Queensborough President. The system may charge you a penny or $1 just to process it, but the tickets are normally $4.97. So it's a steal, and it is a 3-day opportunity for you to learn as a business.
Let's have some clarity. When you say $4.97, you don't mean $4.97. You mean $497, right?
$497.
Okay.
That's the normal price. So you are getting this because of the partnership and the sponsors who've come on board. You're able to participate. We do have some fun activities that we're adding this year with young people who will be performing. We partnered with a young man who has all this talent that he knows, and they're going to have their Faithpreneur Got Talent showcase Thursday afternoon. We kick off, and then we have a gala where I get to honor some incredible individuals who built in just amazing companies without compromising their faith. And then we have a full training and development that we do. Our New York City Commissioner of Small Business Services will be our opening keynote interview, and chock full of over 25 faculty who'll be teaching information to our entrepreneurs. We have a taping of the Vera Moore Show, and then Saturday we close out. So it's a full agenda. If it speaks to you, something that you want to participate in, once again, you can go to faithpreneurweekend.com and put in the code QBP. I'll put that in the chat. And oh, thank you, Richard. I redid the braids for the conference. So,
All right. And so we have cell phones that we use, and speaking legally is not a vehicle to conduct other conversations. And so, there's meaning in words. There's meaning in words. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to have faith. And so, we talk about faith-based. No matter what your base is, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to have faith, because you are only successful as you can be. Nothing is brought before you. You don't have a boss. Work is not being handed down the pipeline to you. You have to create. As they say, you have to kill what you eat. So if faith is not part of your steady spiritual diet, then entrepreneurship may not be as well.
Great point. I might have to take that clip, Mr. Russell, and use it in a promo.
I see how it's flowing right now. Hey, Ed, can you represent me on that intellectual property piece? You know what I'm saying? I need you, bro.
Oh, Lord. Oh, my goodness. Well, yes, definitely catch the replay. And yes, nicely said, Mr. Russell. I appreciate that. Thank you, and Mr. Pichardo, for being our legal experts here on Speaking Legally, where the legal meets the cultural. We'll be back again next week, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you share this out. Let other people know our legal experts are here, and their websites. Please go to the website. If you know someone that is in need of legal advice and or counsel, Law Office of Edward Pichardo.com and Royce Russell Esquire.com. No need to go anywhere else when you have the best here. So thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week by the grace of God. Bye-bye, everyone.
Au revoir and adios.